Are you tired of the banksters making the big bonuses? Is your money in some savings account getting 0.5% interest? Well, take charge of your finance. Next Thursday, Alessio Rastani, the Robin Hood of Wall Street, will be giving a free webinar at 7 p.m. British Standard Time, and he will teach you how to buy low and sell high and preserve your wealth and learn a little bit about these markets so you can take control of your life and your finance. I'll be there. If you want to sign up, click on the link below or go to leadingtrader.com/real. Do it. All right, so you're optimistic about what we're seeing from the States, but it seems like your main battlefront and the main hope here is using science to try to change people's opinion and try to change policy, which is what you're all about. We haven't even got to that part. So I kind of want to talk about the studies you're doing at Imperial, and I guess I'm just going to open it up. What are you doing there? I know you're doing some work with psilocybin. You've done some in the past. What's on your plate these days?
So, I'm a psychopharmacologist. My whole career has been about trying to understand how drugs work. And I started off trying to understand how Valium, benzodiazepines work, how heroin works, how antidepressants work. And because I got a very interesting PhD student, Robin Carhart-Harris, who's been on this program,
Yes.
He was interested in the question of whether a psychedelic trip is the same as dreaming. And he wanted to study that he wanted to ask that question. And over the years, he's worked with me to address that question. And so when I started thinking about it, I realized that there was nothing known about what psychedelic drugs do in the brain. I mean, everyone knows what they do in terms of the subjective experience.
Right, the anecdotal evidence is subjective, but no one...
But no one has actually measured, using modern technology, what's going on. I thought isn't that bizarre? Because, if you're a brain scientist, you want to know what the nature of the psychedelic... the psychedelic experience is one of the most influential, profound experiences in human existence. So surely it should be the subject of neuroscientific research. And I thought, this is weird. Why has no one done it? And of course, the reason no one's done it is because it's too damn difficult because of the law. So we said, okay, let's bite the bullet, let's do it. And we did it. And we've done 3 psilocybin studies using different imaging modalities. And they've all shown the same thing. And they've all shown this amazing phenomenon, which is exactly the opposite of what we predicted. And that's why it shows it was so important to do the study. Because we assumed that if people are going to be lying in a scanner and seeing lots of kind of interesting hallucinations, that their brain might be lighting up. There might be more activity going on in their brain. But there wasn't. In fact, the opposite. Psilocybin shuts off parts of the brain, key parts of the brain that integrate brain function. So the hallucinations and the experiences you get under psilocybin are due to the fact that your brain is disconnected from the outside world and it's living in its inner world, a bit like dreaming. So this was a revolution. I think it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever done. I've actually, completely turned everything on its head. And then when we started looking at the consequences of these experiences, we found that even in normal people, normal volunteers, there was a sense of feeling better after this short trip. Psilocybin only lasts about half an hour. People felt better for a few weeks. We discovered that the more the brain was switched off, or particularly the frontal part of the brain was switched off, the better the sense of well-being later. We looked at the literature and we discovered that other treatments for depression often switch off that part of the brain. So we said, hell, our people are feeling better, that part of the brain switched off. Let's write a grant to see whether we could use psilocybin as a treatment. And we would never have had that idea without doing the brain imaging. So that's an example of where pure science has led to insights which then can be translated into clinical science.
Right, I think Carhart-Harris said that taking the psilocybin was like taking the conductor out of the orchestra and removing that piece, and then it allowed the brain to kind of act in some ways that it hadn't before. And
yes, that's an interesting analogy.
And that was kind of a surprise, as you said, opposite of what you said. But you haven't done a study on psilocybin effects on depression yet. And
No.
That's what you're trying to do.
That's correct, but it's quite difficult.
And how did you get around all the legal ramifications of giving people psychedelics?
Yeah, there's a difference. I don't want to bore your viewers with this, but there's a technical difference between doing a clinical trial and doing an experiment. Up till now, we've done experiments on normal people to look at the physiological effects of the drug. When you move into a clinical trial, then there's a whole nother bundle of regulations called the European Clinical Trials Directive, which everyone says has been the most destructive law ever in Europe. So you can imagine how bad that is. And it really makes doing clinical research in Europe very, very difficult now because of all the extra compliance. So we're struggling with that at present because trying to go through, basically you've got to get a different way of making the drug, which you have to find a company that can make the drug which complies with the international regulations, with the drug laws in this country, and with the clinical trials directive. It's proving very difficult to find any company that can be bothered because they'll say, yeah, we'll do it, but it'll cost you so much money, you won't be able to afford it. And that's really very sad. And
it's like hundreds of thousands of pounds just to get you micrograms of psilocybin, is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it could take a year, and you're saying you can't fire your staff for a year while you wait. So these are real.
These are real practical issues. But I have to say, the Medical Research Council is being sympathetic to it. I mean, I don't think no one expected this to be that difficult. We didn't when we got the grant, and I think they are being sympathetic. They will be, because this is very important. This is a landmark study, and we have to crack it. I mean, we also have to change the regulations as well to make so that if it works, we have to make it available for other doctors. And the current regulations would make it not only almost impossible for other doctors to get. There's only 3 hospitals in the country that have a license to hold psilocybin.
Just to hold it. Wow.
And of course, there's almost no doctor has a license to use it. So everything would have to change. So that's one of the other challenges for us, is to try to make the whole system more rational, so that if it works, people can use it.
If I could give you a license to use any drug, any study, the most advanced MRIs, machines, and I gave you 5 years, do you have a wish list?
Yes, absolutely. It's absolutely straightforward. And I wrote a grant for this a few years ago, but it didn't get funded. I think what we should be doing, we should be taking every drug that works in the brain, or an example of every drug that works on the brain, and we should be doing brain imaging like we're doing, so we can have a fingerprint in the brain of every major brain-acting drug. To my mind, that is fundamental science, but I can't get it funded because people aren't interested in drugs and they're scared of illegal drugs. But yes, I want to compare amphetamine with cocaine, with heroin, with Valium, with psilocybin, with cannabis, with ketamine, with GHB. To my mind, that's such a necessary and obvious thing to do, but it's impossible to get funding for it.